Welcome to YTPioneers. In this video, we'll learn about Henry Ford became one of the most prominent industrialists who notably founded the Ford Motor Company and transformed American life. Henry Ford was supposed to be a farmer by all accounts. Henry was born in Michigan, only 20 years after it had become a state, and grew up in an era when farming was labor-intensive, slow, and manual, so it is not surprising that he developed a fervent hatred for it. However, Henry was fortunate enough to have the chance to escape, whereas the majority of people at the time did not have this opportunity. Because of the steam engine, Detroit, which was just 8 miles to the west of the village where he was born, was quickly developing into an industrial center. Henry was exposed to technology at a young age when few kids his age could even play with it. He would tinker with the watches of his wealthier neighbors, and by the time he was 12, he was not only able to disassemble them, but also to put them back together and fix them. When he saw a working steam engine up close while visiting a Detroit rail company with his class, his interest turned into an obsession. By the time Henry reached adolescence, the steam engine had already entered the farming community. Coal-powered threshing machines and sawmills were starting to become more prevalent, and Henry was learning how to operate them and maintain them. At the age of 16, he took a significant step forward when, in defiance of his father's wishes, he left his hometown to work in Detroit, where any young mechanic could find a very profitable job. Detroit's industrial sector had been expanding for almost 50 years. The Great Lakes, which were essentially the western frontier at the time, were connected to the Hudson River by a canal that was constructed in 1825. In just 50 years, Detroit's population surged by a factor of 10 as a result of massive mines in the north generating copper and iron, and timber mills popping up nearly everywhere. All the untapped resources that had no means to get out could suddenly be transferred by riverboat to New York. About 1,000 companies, including those where Henry would labor during the 1880s, were supported by all this metal and wood in Detroit alone. About this time, Henry happened to read in a British magazine something about the gas engine. A German engineer named Nicholas Otto was manufacturing it in limited quantities, and it was gaining some traction in Europe, but in America, it was virtually unknown. When Henry had the opportunity to work on one of these engines in 1889, he immediately saw its benefits. The engine was far lighter as a result of not using steam. It accomplished all of the combustion inside, and so did away with the heavy boiler and all of the water within. As a result, the gas engine could start up immediately, as opposed to the steam engines of the period, which took up to 30 minutes to heat the water and produce enough steam to begin operating. Henry may have adored the innovation of gas engine, but he didn't completely comprehend it. After all, he had plenty of expertise working with steam and metal, but almost none with electricity, and the gas engine was started by an electric spark. Henry began working for the neighborhood office of the Edison Illuminating Company in order to acquire this expertise that was lacking. It was employing steam engines to produce power for more than 1,000 households in Detroit, so Henry was a logical choice for them to make. When the engines malfunctioned, Henry had to fix them. Nevertheless, when they were running, he had complete freedom. He was able to spend his days experimenting with gas engines thanks to his ideal job. Henry built his first functional gas engine in 1893, by which time he had already been promoted to chief engineer at Edison. Henry had been thinking about creating a horseless carriage with a gas engine ever since he first saw one, but it would take years of work to truly make that notion a reality. Henry had to learn every step by doing in order to construct an automobile in a world without auto parts. He put in 3 years of non-stop work to create this. The quadricycle is a basic frame with a mounted ethanol-powered engine and 4 bicycle wheels. It only had 2 gears, neither of which could be used for reverse, but far worse, it lacked any kind of cooling mechanism, making overheating a frequent problem. Henry made various modifications to the quadricycle during its first year, most notably installing a cooling system. By the time he sold it in 1897 for $200, he had logged 1,000 miles in it. Before eventually feeling secure enough to launch his own business in 1899, Henry built the second and the third quadricycle, constantly enhancing the design. The Detroit Automobile Company was a very ambitious endeavor with a capitalization of $150,000. Numerous members of the Detroit elite, including Henry's colleagues from the Edison Company, invested in it, and everyone was interested to see what Henry might produce given the right funding. Henry had a really good plan. Since he already knew many of the Detroit industrialists, he would try to create a car that they could employ for their businesses. To manufacture his new delivery wagon, as he termed it, he rented a factory and intended to employ 100 people. But it turned out that mass-producing such complicated machines was much more challenging than Henry had anticipated. The vast majority of the components used to construct the delivery wagon were made by other businesses, and the factory as a whole would be forced to halt operations whenever even one delivery was late. Only 20 delivery wagons were made in the first 2 years of the company's existence, and the first one took 6 months to manufacture. By the end of 1902, the other shareholders had had enough of Henry's lack of advancement and had even voted to remove him. Henry was now forced to comply because he only owned 15% of the business, but it's interesting to note that the person who took control of the Detroit Automobile Company would eventually turn it into Cadillac. But that's a tale for another time. What's important is that Henry was fired from his own business and left with just $1,000. It was time to start over, and Henry decided to go in a very different direction this time. Henry would create a vehicle for the typical man to use, rather than focusing on businesses with expensive machinery. You see, at the time, almost all automobiles were expensive purchases. They were typically crafted by skilled artisans one at a time and were frequently intended for racing, which was quickly becoming a popular pastime in America. It would not be simple to transform the car from a status symbol into a commodity, and Henry had to go through 20 different design iterations before he found one that worked. Using funding from his friends and family, Henry dubbed his first creation the Model A and continued working his way through the alphabet over the course of the following 5 years. The manufacturing process, not the car itself, underwent the greatest change during this time. After his first business failed, Henry realized the value of having a solid supply chain. As a result, he made an effort to source as many components from the same manufacturer this time. The Dodge Brothers Company, a machine shop in Detroit that would eventually give rise to the eponymous American brand, is the one he selected, and it will likely sound familiar to you. The biggest game changer of all, though, was Henry's impromptu trip to a Chicago slaughterhouse. There, he noticed something intriguing, a sort of disassembly line where several workers would handle carcasses as they moved along a line. Henry reasoned that he could employ an assembly line using the same procedure but in the opposite direction. In 1904, Henry was able to construct his own factory where he could experiment with the assembly line method using the money he had saved from some of his earlier models, which were also put together by the Dodge brothers. By 1905, the Ford factory employed over 300 workers who produced 25 cars per day, but Henry still hadn't figured everything out. He was manufacturing several different models at once, which prevented him from effectively utilizing an assembly line. Nevertheless, there was a foreshadowing of things to come when Ford became the country's largest auto manufacturer, and its affordable Model N, introduced in 1906, became the best-selling car in the US. In fact, Henry would use the assembly line method to at least partially assemble some of his cars for the first time during the creation of this model. Even though it wasn't a fully moving assembly line, this experiment saw a 5-fold increase in production in the same factory. Of course, logistics play a significant role in Henry's success. To further eliminate the possibility of delays, he established the Ford Manufacturing Company in 1905, complete with a factory that began producing the engines and transmissions for Henry's automobiles. But perhaps the most surprising place, Peru, was where Henry's greatest contributor to success came from. You won't find this story anywhere else, so pay close attention. Henry started building a heat treatment plant in 1907 to create vanadium steel. This alloy was unfamiliar to Americans. In fact, few American furnaces could even reach the temperature required to produce it. Vanadium steel was more than twice as strong as regular steel while being lighter, making the difficulty in producing it worthwhile. Vanadium metallurgy was at the forefront of research at the time, but Henry had a very fortunate connection. He was friends with the two brothers who owned the Peruvian mine that produced 92% of the world's supply of vanadium. By offering it to rail companies in Europe and the US, Joseph and James Flannery successfully commercialized vanadium steel. However, because their Peruvian mine was producing so much vanadium, they had to find a different use for it. When they met Henry in 1906, they immediately made him an offer. They would assist him in converting his entire manufacturing process to the use of vanadium steel. They had sold vanadium steel to the US government for the construction of the Panama Canal, but even that wasn't enough. Their chief engineer constructed Henry's heat treatment facility in 1907, and their business gave Ford all of the vanadium it required for its automobiles. The Model T was the first Ford automobile made with vanadium steel, and it was this alloy that gave it its commercial success. The Model N and its upscale versions were actually less expensive, so it wasn't the cheapest vehicle Henry had ever produced, but it didn't have to be because it was far and away the best car made at the time, far more powerful than any rival. Ford received 25,000 orders for the Model T within weeks of its release, even though it only managed to produce 17,000 of them throughout the entire year of 1909. The only marketing that Henry needed was to emphasize the stark quality differences. Because Henry could see how important the Model T was, he built a second larger factory in 1910. It was in this factory that he would develop the moving assembly line, which was first used in 1913. Production increased exponentially during this time. In 1910, he produced 20,000 Model Ts, and 6 years later, he was producing more than 500,000. Henry also implemented another brilliant plan at the same time. He kept his car price low in order to expand his market share. In fact, he reduced the cost of the Model T by more than half over the course of these 6 years. Model Ts accounted for half of all American automobiles by 1918, and this pattern persisted well into the 1920s. Henry was one of the wealthiest people alive when the rest of the auto industry finally caught up to him at the end of the 1920s though. He actually took the time to write an autobiography in 1922, which is where some of the material for this video came from. Henry's book offers a wealth of business advice that is still relevant today, in addition to an eloquent account of his experiences. That concludes today's video, folks. If you're interested in more informative and inspirational content, feel free to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated for future videos. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.